Hello, Kavarta. Thank you for joining in. We'll wait a minute or two for other people to join. Hello, everyone. We will wait a few minutes, minute or two, for other people to join. So please be patient. While you're waiting, I will introduce briefly myself. My name is Janek Radzikowski. I am here on behalf of David J. Anderson School of Management. And today, David himself will be talking to you about recipe for success. So before we begin and also allowing other people to join, I will start a small poll that will allow us to have some information about you, to have you more personal. So if you be so kind and click it through, uh, yeah, sorry. So yeah, if you can take part in the poll, we will be grateful to see where are you from, and if we should say good evening or good morning. I see more people are joining, so let's give like 2 minutes more. We expect to have you, a lot of you, because it's very interesting and a great opportunity to hear David himself talking about his newest edition of the book, Discovering Kanban. So let's wait a little bit more. Hello again for those who joined in the meantime. My name is Janek Radzikowski on behalf of David J. Anderson School of Management. We are still giving a bit of time for people to join the webinar, so please take part, please vote in the poll, and stay tuned. We will start in 2 minutes max. In the meantime, I may say that we are be saying good morning rather, as most of the people, most of you are from North America, so hope you will, depending on which time zone you are, start the day with our presentation. So let's give 1 minute more. We will start 7 p.m. our Bilbao time. So in 1 minute. All right, let's kick off. So the final presentation from my side, Jan Radzikowski on behalf of David J. Anderson School of Management. Today, we will have the opportunity to hear David Anderson talking about extract of his new book, Discovering Kanban. We will hear about uh, the recipe for success, the 7 steps for success. If you will have any questions, please use the Q&A box and pass the questions to us. They will be answered if time will allow us at the end of the session. If you have not taken part in the poll, please do so, so we are more aware of you, of our audience. And let's begin. So David, the floor is yours.
Hi, thanks, Yannick. Good afternoon and good morning to those of you in the Americas. As Yannick said, it's evening time here in Bilbao in Spain. And today I'm going to talk about my new book here, Discovering Kanban, and very specifically, chapter 14, The Recipe for Success. And the subtitle of this, it says, A Leadership Roadmap for Maturing Your Organization. And we'll explore why that might be true. So maybe some of you tuned in here are just like me, or at least the version of me a little over 20 years ago, who was called into the corner office by the vice president of the business unit where I worked, and asked if I would fill a vacant management position. So while I'd held some leadership positions in small companies, I'd worked in the 1990s, startups. This was the first time that I was being offered a leadership position in a large North American telecom organization. And giving up my individual contributor position, really quite a comfortable job, to take the leadership of a software development department. And for many of you, getting a promotion like that means you're giving up the professional skill that you've developed since you graduated university. Perhaps you're not a developer any longer. Now you're promoted to manager. Or you're not a business analyst or a tester or a user experience designer or whatever you might have been doing for your career. Now you have to live vicariously through the organization that reports up to you. And it's a whole different skill set. You're probably going to be out of your comfort zone. If this has happened to you recently, you are out of your comfort zone. And you feel the need to show that you're competent, that you deserved the promotion and the opportunity. You want to have confidence. If you're not confident, people won't follow you. You won't be an effective leader. You want to build trust with the bosses that gave you the job in the first place and with the team that report up to you. So you need trust going up, and from below, you need people to trust you. You want to deliver effectively. You want to be successful. You personally want to be successful. You want your organization to be successful. You want the for successful. You want to make a contribution. You want to make a difference in the world, a difference for your team, a difference for your employer. And yet you're being asked to do something for which you really haven't had any training. And my advice to you is that if you focus on processes and frameworks in this new position, that somehow take some prescriptive recipe and install it into the organization, ask your people to follow it, that will get you fired. Focusing on processes and frameworks will get you fired. You need to produce results. You're expected to be accountable, to take responsibility for the outcomes that your organization's producing, and for those to be desirable outcomes that your employer, your sponsors are paying for. So how do you get started? So I have my recipe for success, and it's been around for quite a while. Some of you will recognize there was a chapter in my Kanban book from 2010 on this topic, and I first published it perhaps 5 years earlier, 2005 or thereabouts. The latest version now has these 7 steps. Focus on quality, reduce work in progress, deliver often, focus on flow, improve predictability, develop a triage discipline, and manage the cost of delay. Those of you familiar with the 2010 version will recognize there's been some changes. So let's look at these in turn. Focus on quality, the reason being it's under your control. In 2006, when I got my last proper job before I had my own company, I had a firm called Corbis in Seattle, owned by Bill Gates. I was the senior director of software engineering there. And one of the first things I did in that job was organize a town hall meeting in the cafeteria, the break room. And I got there and I stood up on a beer crate, bottle crate, to make a little stage to be just a little bit taller than everyone else in the room so they could see me and hear me. And I said, look, I've been observing what's going on, and what I see is round about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you get a visit from one of the project managers from the PMO, and they come in carrying a clipboard to take some notes, or their tablet computer, and they ask you about the work you're doing and whether it's going to be finished on schedule. And for some of you, that means that day, that afternoon. And you feel some pressure to say yes, to meet their deadline or fit their project plan. And you need to ask yourself, will it be finished and working properly? And am I confident it's of good quality? And if you're not confident it's of good quality, I want you to tell the project manager that you need more time, and that unfortunately that means it will be over schedule. And if that project manager doesn't like what you have to say, send them down the corridor. The door to my office is open, and tell them to speak to me. That one intervention halved the defect rate at Corbis. Just giving the developers permission to do a good quality job and take their time to be confident they've done it properly halved the number of bugs that had to be fixed. And you can imagine what the impact that has on other work. Everything finishes faster and more predictably because we're not reworking, we're not bug fixing, we're not handling a lot of failure demand unexpectedly. Everything gets more predictable if you focus on quality first. And it's completely under your control as the manager. Second thing is to reduce work in progress. If we're too much multitasking, if we're overwhelmed thinking about too many things, of course, quality will suffer. So will predictability. And in my 2010 book, I published data from my own experience as a manager that there is a correlation between the lead time and the quality that was produced. And in one particular situation, all the details are in the 2010 Kanban book. Two teams doing almost identical work when I was a manager at Motorola. One team had a 6.5 times longer lead time to build features for very similar work in mobile telephony server elements in the phone network. The difference in quality, the number of defects being produced, was 30 times. So at 6.5 times increase in how long it took was producing a 30 times increase in the defect rate. It was a non-linear problem. And interestingly, in the software engineering literature, the academic world where they had studied the quality of software for many years, decades, no one had ever studied lead time and quality. People had studied how much time you spend working on something and quality, but not the actual lead time, because of the mindset that the programmer inserts a defect. They're typing in a line of code. That code could be good or bad, and if it's bad, then you get a bug. If you're not working on something, you can't possibly be inserting a defect. But there was a failure to understand that the information that you have in your head about the work you're doing, that deteriorates over time. And when you come back to the work, having been multitasking on other things, the quality of your memory has decreased. The quality of your memory of conversations with other people that you need to liaise and collaborate with has decreased. And you immediately insert defects. So reducing work in progress will reduce the lead times, and the lead time has a big impact on the quality. So steps 1 and 2 feed off each other, and the net result is making the work not just higher quality, but the time it takes to produce much more predictable, which makes our planning and forecasting so much better, and everyone's happy. Step 3 is deliver often. You have to build trust. Trust with the people who've given you the promotion, trust with the people who work for you, trust with your customers. And delivering small things frequently in a predictable, reliable manner will build trust. The way trust works in our brains, it's very transactional. If someone does something for you in a predictable, reliable fashion, you trust them a little bit more. And every time they do that, you trust them more and more and more. It's also a very asymmetrical thing, that little things done frequently build trust, but one bad thing, even infrequently, can destroy it all in a single move. And those of you who've ever been in a relationship will understand that. You get to know someone, you build the trust with them incrementally, little by little by little, but one incident where they let you down destroys all of the trust. So delivering often in a predictable, reliable manner with good quality will build the trust that you need. And that trust is known in the academic literature of sociology as social capital. So the trust is social capital. And if you have social capital, there's a magic bureau de change in the ether. You can take your social capital and you can exchange it for political capital. And political capital helps you be effective in your job as a manager in a major enterprise. So you need to build the trust by delivering. Step 4 is to focus on flow. something I first published about in my 2003 book, Agile Management. And the mindset that lead time is important, and that someone requests a piece of work and we perform a series of activities, discovering information or knowledge until we have a finished piece of work which meets the requirement of whoever asked for it. And lead time is such an important aspect of quality, reliability, predictability, and the acceptability to the customer. If you order a cup of coffee, you expect it delivered within a few minutes, less perhaps. If you order the wedding cake for your wedding, you expect it delivered before the wedding. And it's a reasonable question to ask the bakery that will produce it, how far in advance do I need to order my wedding cake to guarantee delivery before the wedding? That's the concept of a lead time. How far in advance do I need to ask for something to ensure that I get it when I believe I need it? And to make lead time predictable, we need to focus on flow, recognize sources of delay, identify and resolve blockers, eliminate the root causes of those, and report our aging work in progress in order to know where to focus on the older stuff, focus on blocked stuff, develop the capability to resolve blocking issues, develop the channels of communication you need inside the organization to reach out to dependencies and get blockers resolved. Right? Developing yet more social capital on a wider scale. And you'll recognize now that focusing on flow isn't entirely under your control. You need to collaborate with others across a wider enterprise to make it happen effectively. So you're now at this point in the recipe for success, you're developing skills that enable you to influence other people to get things done, where focusing on quality is entirely under your control. Reducing the work in progress might be entirely under your control, or it might need some negotiation. And gradually, as we're moving through this list, you're reaching out further and wider and asking other people to cooperate and collaborate with you. It gets more difficult. Step 5, improve predictability. What we have here are two lead time distribution histograms with the sort of best fit curve on them. The one on the left is a thin-tailed distribution, and that's predictable. What it means is that most things happen within a reasonable band of predictability, and if you're a bit late, it's not that bad. Instead of here, it's over here somewhere. It's not that bad. The one on the right, the fat-tailed distribution, this is based on some real data that we got from our colleague Andreas Bartel when he was working with Lotto 24 in Germany. I think it's from an IT operations group. Most of the requests were processed on the same day, and the second most popular was the next day. But the tail on this distribution is 77 days. So the customer experience is that when I ask IT for something, they get it to me the same day or the next day, mostly. Occasionally, I have to wait 3 or 4 days. So imagine the trust that's building up. I trust them, I trust them, I trust them, I trust them even more. I continue to trust them. And then they take 77 days for the next thing I asked for. Bang, the trust is gone. So if you're the manager of this organization with this fat-tailed lead time distribution, it is very difficult for you to be trustworthy. how far in advance do I need to order my wedding cake? 2 or 3 days before the wedding? 25% chance of on-time delivery. You want 100% chance of on-time delivery for your wedding cake, 77 days in advance. It's a huge difference. So we need to focus on the items that are in the tail. The risk is in the tail. The impact on your effectiveness as a manager is in the tail. You need to find the root causes of these items that show up with long lead times, what caused them to be delayed, and fix those, eliminate them, move your fat-tailed distribution to become a thin-tailed distribution. Step 6, develop a triage discipline. Triage is a well-established technique. And the whole idea is to be able to say, we have limited capacity, limited resources. There's only so many things we can work on at once. We have a WIP limit, a work in progress limit. Therefore, what should we work on now? What waits until later? And what do we not do at all? At this point, we really need the collaboration of our customers, and we need to understand their context. We need to understand something about the risks that they're managing and the value of the items that they might be requesting. And most importantly, we need to have at least an anecdotal or qualitative understanding of the cost of delay. If something can wait until later, how long can it wait before it becomes urgent? And if something's not particularly valuable, why are we doing it at all? So developing this skill and developing the skill to facilitate the conversation about triage is an important piece of being a successful manager. And as I said, to do it, we need to have an understanding of the cost of delay. And it doesn't need to be a sophisticated quantitative understanding. In the Kanban world for the last 15 years, we've had this very simple approach that we understand delay on these x-axis and the cost or the impact of that delay on a y-axis. And if we have our gut feeling for how delay impacts the value or the opportunity cost, the loss of value that we might incur, then we can classify or categorize the work coming in into one of these 4 categories. The fixed date problem, that's the wedding problem. If the wedding cake fails to arrive in time for the wedding, it's a total loss. It's a unit step function. And these four types, expedite, fixed date, standard, and intangible, I originally developed, observed from real life implementation at Corbis during 2007. And then I published these as part of the 2010 Kanban book. They've proven to be incredibly robust, and it's an incredibly simple technique for people to understand, but very powerful when it helps together with lead time to answer the question, do we need to work on this now? Can it wait until later? And if so, when? So it's an enabling technology to build that triage discipline that you require. Now you do these 7 things and you'll be marvelously successful. Consequently, you will be called into the corner office and rewarded with a promotion to the next level of manager. Great, fantastic, more pay, lots of opportunity, and a great career progress in prospect, working your way up through the organization. The reward for great work is to be given more of it. So how to replicate the success that you had now at a bigger scale? Instead of department manager, maybe you're now product unit manager. There's 150 people and 6 managers reporting to you. It turns out that it's a slightly different problem. But once again, focusing on processes and scaled frameworks, that will get you fired. Instead of processes and scaled frameworks, you need to substitute leadership. Right, so my leadership recipe for success for those second and higher levels of manager, you need to lead with purpose, use customer-centric metrics to drive the organization, implement feedback loops with those metrics, and hold people accountable. So let's look at these in turn. Lead with purpose, defining goals that are meaningful to the success of your business and meaningful to your customers. Help align large numbers of people that you don't know directly anymore. Your organization may already be so big that you don't know everyone, or at least if you know their face, maybe not their name. If you know their name, you don't really know their background, how long they've worked there, where did they come from, are they married, are they not married, do they have kids, do they not have kids? You don't know everyone in the way that you did when the scale was smaller. And this larger organization needs to be able to move quickly with autonomy. And that will happen if they understand the purpose and they can align their decision-making behind the purpose. You need to use customer-centric metrics. And together with Alexei Zegloff, I wrote a book called Fit for Purpose, which dedicates a significant amount of the writing, the chapters in the book to this topic. So if you're in the business of selling wedding cakes, the customer cares about your due date performance. How often have you delivered the wedding cake on time? And your lead times need to be predictable. If you're ordering a wedding cake, you want to do it from a bakery with a thin-tailed lead time distribution, not one with a fat-tailed distribution. And getting your workforce aligned to focus on the customer's needs and expectations, the risks the customer's managing, fulfilling the customer's purpose for asking you to do business with you. That will help drive the right changes in the organization to make it effective. Now, to drive changes, we need feedback mechanism. We need to be a learning organization. And this picture is taken from the 3rd edition of Fit for Purpose, and it shows a double loop learning capability where we have some strategic marketing objectives coming in on the left-hand side, and they are telling us which services we want to offer, which market segments we want to target, and perhaps the expectations that those market segments have. Those appear out the other side as the fitness criteria. And these are the requirements, not just for functionality. It could also be for service delivery and non-functional things like performance, reliability, quality, and so forth, that we have to hit with our product development or our service delivery. So we perform some activity and we deliver it to the customer, and then we sample the customer's feedback. And we analyze it. We analyze it to understand, is what we're doing fit for the customer's purpose? Are they satisfied? Do we meet their expectations? If not, how do we get better? And then the outer loop is asking the question, are we even in the right business? Do our customers like what we're doing for them? Are the right customers coming? And if customers are unhappy, is that because our product's bad or because somehow we're targeting the wrong audience? And that causes us to learn in this outer loop. So to make these mechanisms work, we need to be able to empathize with our customer. We need to be able to define the customer-centric metrics. We need to have some instrumentation and ability to sample what's happening when we deliver something. When we sample that, we want to then compare it with what we expected. And is it meeting our expectations? And if not, how do we adjust? Building that organization as a leader, you're thinking in systems. You're building a system of feedback loops that enable the organization to evolve and improve. So you need to be an adaptive leader, disrupt the organization with just enough stress to catalyze improvement. Make your people a little bit uncomfortable by holding the mirror up to the reality. This is what our customers need. This is what we're currently delivering. They don't match. We need to improve. Our basic formula for this adaptive leadership, this evolutionary improvement, there must be a stressor. The stressor is your customer-centric metric or your purpose, your objectives. A feedback mechanism like the double loop learning that I just showed you, and then the active leadership. This is what our customers expect. This is what we currently perform. They don't match. Let's do something about it. The active leadership that catalyzes the improvement to happen. So leadership has to be challenged to improve the flow. Are you tracking lead time? Do you have the feedback mechanisms in place? Do you have the instrumentation? And most importantly, are your managers being held accountable? Are they being held accountable for meeting customer expectations? Because if not, there isn't the stress to provoke the active leadership you need. If I'm not being held accountable, why should I do anything about it? Now, to hold people accountable, we need to define outcomes. Measure and report the metric that aligns with the outcome, implement the feedback loop. And we need to do this at all levels in the organization, from the first level of manager or team lead the whole way up. And for those of you who don't speak English as a native language, the word accountable is tricky to translate. It doesn't translate very easily into Spanish or Portuguese or German or Russian or many other languages. Accountable means the person who is responsible for the outcome. So while the team on the field playing football are responsible for playing the match, it's the team manager who is held accountable for the results. So to summarize, my first line manager, newly promoted manager's recipe for success: focus on quality, reduce work in progress, deliver often, focus on flow, improve predictability, develop a triage discipline, and manage for cost of delay. And you do that, and you'll be sufficiently successful, you get promoted to the next level, where your behavior needs to change and you must focus on leading with purpose, use customer-centric metrics, implement feedback loops, and hold your people accountable. And I achieved all these things with what we now call Kanban. thank you. That's the presentation, and Yannick will tell us if we have some time for questions.
Hello, thank you very much. Yes, we have some time for questions, so I strongly encourage all participants to put them either in Q&A or in chat, but we can start with the first one that we have already. So David, it's about the feedback loop. So the question is, which feedback loop should we start with, internal or external, in our, say, way to success?
I think you start with internal stuff. You start with things that are under your own control. A boss that I had 20 plus years ago said, you tidy your own backyard first before you complain about the neighbors.
All right, very lively example. So another question. You mentioned that people should be held accountable despite the position they are in. So what we can do if they refuse to take accountability for their decisions? Of course, it depends on our position, but let's say downwards and upwards, you have any tips?
Yeah, it's a decent question. Like, if you have a boss or some layers of boss above you who are not being held accountable and aren't taking the responsibility for the role that they're in, they're collecting their paycheck, but they're not really taking responsibility. And I know from my travels around the world and the classes we do, um, from Europe, but we have students from all over the world, from as far east as New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan, Republic of China, and so on. And on the other side, the Americas and far west of the United States and Canada, so the whole globe, we know from that experience that in some cultures, taking accountability is not that popular. And it's certainly come up recently when I visited Peru, that the Peruvians I met said this is a significant problem for them, that they have mid-level and senior level leaders who aren't taking accountability, and what can you do about it? That's incredibly difficult. Where the other way around, if you are a boss and you're taking responsibility and you carry some accountability, then you need people who are willing to do that. And if you don't have them, you need to replace the people you've got with people who will. And it's something that you need to be focused on when you're recruiting. You need to look for people who take responsibility, that it's sort of built into their character. And it could be something as simple as the person tells you that they were in the Scouts when they were a teenager. Okay, fantastic. Tell me about that. Well, we went on this hiking trip in the Scottish mountains, and I was the leader, and we had these kids. Some of them were just 10 years old, just coming up from the Cub Scouts, and the weather closed in, and it got so foggy we could hardly see from the back of the line to the front. And I realized that we couldn't push that any further. It was too dangerous. So we found a little bit of flat land, and I said, okay, stop here. We're going to pitch the tent. We're going to sit inside this tent until the weather improves. 6 hours later, when the fog had cleared, we came out and realized that we were only 10 meters away from a cliff edge. You hire that person. And that's a story from an old college friend of mine called David Morton, who took my job at IBM when I left there in 1997. Mm-hmm. So you look for people who take responsibility and are willing to be held accountable. And that's partly why they get paid more to be the manager. When you have bosses that aren't taking responsibility, you can nudge them in the right direction. But it's a similar problem to being a child if you have an irresponsible parent. Right? There's not that much that you can do about it. It's a tough one. All right, great question. Thanks for that.
Another question. Uh, David, you spoke much about software development. Have you worked with services outside of the IT domain? And does your recipe for success still apply?
So my personal career experience was in the IT industry, product development and bigger companies. I worked at IBM in the PC group, PC division. I worked at Microsoft in developer tools. I worked in the telecom industry, mobile phones. So my career experience is there. On the other hand, for the last 15 years, I've been running a management training business where we train managers from all sorts of industries. But we focus entirely on professional services, knowledge work, the general category of intangible goods. If the work is invisible, as opposed to something that's physical, tangible goods, if you have a warehouse full of inventory of components, physical stuff, that's probably not our space. And with the Kanban method in the beginning, our experience was only software product development and some IT systems development. And people said, well, it won't work anywhere else. And then they started trying it in things like IT operations. And it got so successful there that, hey, this is only for IT operations and IT services. You couldn't possibly use it in software product development. And then other people came along and started trying it for other things. Some companies hired me. There was one in Argentina about 12 years ago. They brought me down to Buenos Aires, and the owner of the company, there's about 250, 300 people, and he said, I want to Kanban the whole company. And we did our static workshop, the system thinking approach to implementing Kanban, for about 50 people. They represented the sales department, the human resources department, marketing, all sorts of functions in the company. We Kanbaned all of them. And there are many more stories like that. We now have Kanban training for accountants and finance people. We have Kanban training for lawyers and legal services. We have different people developing vertical market versions of what we're doing. So the answer is yes, it appears to work for pretty much any professional services, intangible goods. And the general management and leadership advice, I think, is good for all industries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I think we have still time for one question. The last one, is it a correct way to block an issue if a team member isn't able to work on the task? For example, because they are working on expedite issue. Or in general, what criteria should we use to mark a blocker which is inside the team?
So no one's working on it. And I'd say it's blocked. Yeah. I think the criteria is simple. Is anyone working on this right now? In other words, are we moving forward? Are we learning something new about it? Are we generating new knowledge or information that moves it closer to being complete? If the answer is no, it's blocked. We want to know why. If it's internal, well, that's useful information. Sometimes we see organizations who use different blocker tickets, different colors of blocker ticket, and usually 3 categories. It's internal to our team or our department, in other words, under the political control of our immediate manager. It's internal to the company, but external to us. We need some cooperation. And then the third category is it's completely external. It's a vendor or customer dependency or something of that nature. And I think that that's really useful categorization. But something is blocked if you're not working on it, if you're not learning and you're not moving forward. And I noticed that Yannick is confusing us all by calling himself Lauren Durdan, who's our other colleague from the Bilbao office. I guess you're
Yes,
using Lauren's login for Zoom. Huh?
yes, apologies, I changed it, but due to technical issues, I was logging
Not
off, so I need
not
to
to
change.
worry. I mean, you don't look like a Lauren.
I'm trying, I'm doing my best.
So are we out of time?
Yes, we will
Yeah.
be ending. Thank you very much,
Thank you
David.
everyone for joining us, and thanks for the great questions.
Thank you. For all participants, there will be fit for purpose survey sent to you automatically after the webinar. So we'll be very grateful for you answering if your needs were met and how we can improve. Thank you very much again, and hope to see you in classrooms and on
And
other
judging
events.
by the names, there's quite a few of you in Latin America. So enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening or have a nice day.